not. This particular group, I've traveled with all of them in this one, all three part of it. This particular group should slow down.
In terms of rest,
In terms of breath,
in terms of recreation.
right. That's so many people. It's so many people.
That's really
Good. It's all like people is like just go down China. Dinner, like knocking on the door and just like letting. Letting us like you're like pop asleep at like oh. Although I will say, everyone can talk most of the rest, you know. So that's nice. And you know, someone's playing, they just don't understand, like, so like,
Official thing.
they really, yeah.
some stuff.
Like,
Too much activity. That's too much.
I know Commissioner Malone was touching. What is she gonna do about something? I know, it is 4:30.
No, that's fair.
I know Commissioner Sukov's like you.
Well, it's not bad.
No, I got some there.
Oh, no. Sunday.
Just did it.
I do the weekends. I do harvest times. Joe and Jim.
Hello, hello.
For like thought of, you guys sent it in.
Hi, Sylvia. You're on mute.
Hey, Joe and Jim and everyone.
Are you guys new allocations members?
No,
Okay.
I'm not.
Are you, Sylvia?
What did you say?
Are you on allocations now?
Yes, we do, Joe. We'll welcome her when we get the meeting started.
Awesome.
Okay.
We got everybody.
Oh, he's probably putting them in from attendees.
Commissioner Holoma's here, okay?
Got everybody? Quorum?
I think Commissioner Hornbuckle's coming too. I think we're. Do you want to, do you want to try my lap?
Chair, I think Dr. Jackson's as an attendee.
I'm sorry.
We're just having trouble sharing.
Okay.
Hi, folks. We're just making sure we can get our share screen working. Oh, sure. I love it. I love it.
Then,
Commissioner Paloma is totally fine, but you did make me laugh.
I will kiss anybody's ring. Mea culpa.
Absolutely
So
none
sorry.
necessary. Absolutely none necessary. Totally fine. All right, here we go. Let's try from my laptop.
Julia is the technology.
That's the wrong one. That's ACAC, but the PowerPoint's over here. Okay, next. All right, panel password. It was in here.
Oh, great.
What is the password? That's cute. Hard @ sign. we go. All right. Computer audio? Do you want me to do a different one?
No.
Okay, just join webinar. Okay. And
Did I hear it?
oh, can you stop sharing? Just checking that everybody can. Oh, I think you're going to have to mute something on that. Okay, perfect. Just checking that everybody can see the deck.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Then yes, we're ready to roll.
Okay. Let's see. I call this meeting of the Allocations Committee to order at 4:35 p.m. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the June 5th Allocations Committee meetings. Sorry, there's an echo in the room.
A motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Are we ready? Okay. The first item on our agenda is approval of the June 5th, 2025 Allocations Committee meeting minutes. Everybody should have received that in your packet. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
Was that Commissioner Daniel?
Yes. Yes, it
And
was.
do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Truzillo. Is there any discussion? All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. Before we move on to our second voting agenda item, which I suspect we may have a tiny bit of discussion on, I would like to welcome our new committee member, Commissioner Bodell, and also welcome Commissioner Nugent, who is here with us today as well. And you all cannot, I don't know if you can see in the room, but we have Chair Small and Director Philippe with us as well.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, Commissioner Blaze is here as well. I'm
Thank you.
sorry. My apologies. Thank you, Tina. I knew somebody would be keeping an eye out for me. Is anybody else here that we should welcome? So, okay. We do have Hannah Peacock from the city. I cannot see that. You'll have to jump in, Martine.
Hey there. Just wanted to welcome Hannah Peacock from the City Attorney's Office, who's in the web gallery. That's the only guest I see in the web gallery.
Thank you, Hannah, for being here. We may need you today. We have a very packed agenda. So we're going to move to the next voting item.
I have one more interjection. I'd like to address our Assistant City Manager, who's also a guest in the gallery, Lycidio Pereira. Thank you for being here as well.
Thank you. Welcome. It's impossible to see everybody at that distance. Welcome. Okay. The second item on our agenda is the vote to recommend additional panelists to the Office of Arts and Culture's funding program review and panel roster. You have that list of recommended panelists in front of you. Do we have a motion?
Move that we accept the panelists.
We have a motion from Commissioner Holomo. Is there a second?
Second,
Madam Chair.
We have a second from Commissioner Jackson. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Holomo.
I saw in today's presentation, we're going to see how I guess a formal request for COP organizations has been sent out, or maybe it's always been sent out because we adopted the rules a while ago. So I just want to make sure that our groups are in compliant. So if the staff has a moment to let us know, we'll certainly work on that and encourage more people. Thank you.
Yes. So I think if I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit of what Commissioner Halima just said, in the sheet, you can see the referral column, and some of them are referred by COP organizations. And that's because in the guidelines last year, we awarded points for COP organizations who nominated a panelist. And some of those have been doing that and got theirs in this summer, which is great, and still will get them the points for the year. So yes, I will answer your email, Commissioner Helmo. If you're curious if your liaison organization got theirs in, I'm happy to look individually at each group as well.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Julia. Thank you, Julia. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposition? The motion passes unanimously. We're going to move on now to briefings, which Julia will be handling for us. But before we do that, I want to kind of set, excuse me, I've got something bothering me here. I want to set the context for our meeting today. The staff of OAC and the staff of the city of Dallas as a whole have been working very hard over the last 6 weeks or longer to be sure, but I think it's as short as 6 weeks. So it's a lot of work in a brief period of time to be sure that our city is in compliance with all applicable laws. However, I want to assure you in the context that we will still center our Dallas arts community and everyone in it. We're going to discuss the federal resolutions that set new boundaries and how we interpret diversity, equity, and inclusion in scoring metrics. However, we are not erasing all concepts that we have looked at before. We want to make sure that we deliver arts to all citizens of Dallas, but that we do so in compliance with all applicable laws. As you'll see in some of the solutions proposed, we are changing how we work, but not what we deliver to the city of Dallas. This is going to be a slow process. So I want to ask that you all have a lot of patience and tolerance, particularly for our OAC staff. I assure you that when you get a document only moments before a meeting, it is because the staff was literally working on it every possible minute that they had up until the moment that it was sent to you. So I know that that creates a hardship when you have to read something right before a meeting. We appreciate that impact, and we appreciate you doing everything you can to be as prepared for the meeting as possible. But we understand that there may be times when you haven't read it all, and that's why we will stop and pause for questions when necessary.
Madam Chair, I don't have the packet.
I will see if somebody in the room can get the packet sent to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let me see. I've lost my place. So this summer, we may not be able to work at our usual speeds of funding processes while we wait to work with multiple stakeholders, including legal, governmental, and of course, our community. This is not because the work isn't important. It's because it's too important for us to not take this seriously and take the time to do it right. Am I good? Okay. So in that spirit, because we have a lot to cover, because all of our funding programs are impacted in some way, I'm going to ask that you hold your questions as Julia goes through the briefing until she pauses for break. So everybody take a minute, get a notepad, a pen, something handy so that you can jot down your questions as we go through the briefing. We'll take as much time as necessary for the questions, but we would like to give Julia an opportunity to get through it. In most instances, I anticipate that the question you have will be answered on the next slide. So we're going to wait for some natural breaks. Today is the start of our conversation. We are not solving everything. That said, as you do have questions, Assistant City Manager Liz Sadia Pereira, with my pronunciation, Hannah Peacock, and the OAC staff are here to answer your questions together. We need your voices as liaisons for our arts community. Often in times of big change comes big misinformation, and I cannot emphasize this enough. I'm sure you have all received, and if you haven't, you will receive calls from artists. Please feel comfortable referring them to the OAC staff, and please feel comfortable reassuring them that we are doing everything in our power to get these funding programs out in as close to the same time schedule as possible. So we are not ending funding. We are simply taking a look at our processes to make sure that we are in compliance. Please encourage your networks to come to meetings, to email the OAC if they have a question, and to be part of moving forward. To that end, you will see at the back of your packet, and we'll talk about it at the end of the meeting if there's time, there is an appendix with materials if you have an interest in listening to meetings that have already transpired, reading the legal mandates that we are now required to comply with. And of course, if you have any questions, you can direct them to the OAC, and you can share those resources. Those are public resources. You can share those resources with artists as well, the links and things that are in the appendix. So with that preamble, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Julia for our first briefing on City Council Resolution number 25.
Okay. Just in case you have not had a chance to read this yet, I'm going to read it verbatim because I don't think I could summarize it well. So basically, back in June 25th, City Council adopted Resolution number 25-1081, which directed the city manager to review and evaluate city programs and policies to determine whether any adjustments may be necessary to ensure compliance with federal directives, and authorize the city manager to take any temporary operational actions necessary to ensure city programs and policies are in compliance with those federal directives. So, City of Dallas is undertaking this review and has temporarily ceased operational enforcement and or use of programs or policies that could be out of compliance with anti-discrimination laws, federal grant conditions, and federal directives, including but not limited to, and there's 5 executive orders here. Here they are. Here are the ones that were specifically listed in this resolution. I'm sorry, Commissioner Holomo.
Sorry, I can bring up my copy, but are you sharing the screen right now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I don't see it. I think everybody else is following along on some other device, but I don't see it.
All right.
I can bring
Give
it
us
up if
just
that's
one
better.
moment.
Okay.
I think we can. It was working, so I hope we can get it. That looks positive. We are gonna have a little hard time seeing you, but
Got it. There
I
it
think
is.
that we're getting there. How about now, Commissioner Holomo? I'm using you as the perfect. All right. So here's our 5 executive orders that were specifically mentioned in this resolution. The one that is the most impactful to OAC's funding programs is that first one, 14151, which was titled "Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing." That is the one that is allowing us to think about things differently in our funding program. So if you're going to read one and you're short on time, that is the one that I would read. I've linked it there. Okay, let's get off this page. Programmatic impact. So this is a citywide directive. It's everybody working together. This is not just OAC. So we have been working with a compliance task force to ensure that our artists and community stakeholders continue to be served as seamlessly as we can, while also we remain as a city legally resilient is a phrase that I've heard a few times that I think is where we need to be. Important thing for this group to know is that fully executed contracts for 2025 will be able to continue. So that's for Arts Activate, that is for COP. If you had a contract by the date that this needed to be done, you'll be able to continue with no further issues. And we have most of our artists are doing that for this year. So we're closing out a vast majority of our 24-25 contracts with no disruption from this. The upcoming year's programs have been a little bit delayed, and they're in the following list. So Culture of Value Month, all of the cultural of value applications and programs, COP for 2026. As you know, normally by this point in the summer, we would have been through several rounds of scenarios, and we have not done that yet, and we will not be starting today. So COP is already a little bit delayed in that respect, but we still will be able to do the program. The community arts program is in the same boat as COP. And Arts Activate 2026 is a little different because panel has not happened yet, but we still need to take a moment to look at what is very carefully in the guidelines and how we score it. So all of these upcoming programs for next year are being reviewed by the task force to make sure that we are squeaky clean and ready to go when we roll these out for artists in the fall. All artists that had applied to any of these were emailed on Friday, August 8th. I've put the exact email in the appendix. I believe that most of you were on it if you were related to groups that applied or knew them. But just in case you hadn't seen it yet, that is in the back of the packet. When we left it at applicants would be notified of next steps as soon as we possibly could. Okay, so in this one, and I apologize, the print is, I didn't realize it was harder to read on this screen. So you may want to follow along in the packets that I sent. I have not made any changes since those were sent yesterday. So this is for the year 2024-2025. So that is the current year that we are sitting in right now, not for the fall. For Culture of Value, we never sent award letters. We scored them all. We received all the applications, but we never announced who would have participated. And so we will be postponing the whole program until FY 25-26, and we will be updating artists as well as our library and rec center partners as soon as we can on when those new dates will be. Arts Activate 2024-25 is slightly different because, as you recall, Arts Activate has 3 rounds, one fall, winter, and then spring. For rounds 1 and 2 that we announced in the fall and winter, all of those contracts were executed far before April, which was the effective date of the executive order that was placed in January. So all of the ones from rounds 1 and 2 are able to move forward with no delays or hiccups or concerns. Round 3 is slightly more challenging because the award notices went out in early April. And so 45 contracts technically were executed after the effective date. Additionally, 3 contracts have not been executed due to delays getting insurance. They're all larger events. And so when we go through our risk team and you need to get additional insurance for those, sometimes it takes a while for our partners to do that. And since June, we've not been able to sign new contracts or move forward in that process. So 3 contracts we are still working on, and then 45 were technically executed after that date. The good news is that all artists got award letters in early April. So we are currently working with our task force to just cross our T's and dot our I's and make sure that we are ensuring compliance for all of the projects, including the 3 unexecuted contracts. So we hope to be able to give word to those organizations and move forward as soon as we can on those. Cultural Organizations Program. On this one, everyone had a fully executed contract except for Anita Martinez Ballet Folklorico. The reason for that was due to a financial agreement they had with a lender. They had a lien on their assets, which meant that for a number of reasons, we could not sign a new contract with them. However, they they made a resolution with their lender, and we are in the clear and ready to go. The challenge now is we will be working with the city attorney's office to ensure that their contract now complies with federal directives. And that may take a little while, but there is no reason that we shouldn't be able to move forward with that contract too. The Community Artist Program, we are all okay there. So for this year, it has been an exciting challenge making sure that we were in the clear and crossing T's and dotting I's with everyone. But for the most part, this represents hundreds of contracts this year that for the most part really are still proceeding with no issues, problems, and many of them are actually, especially as it's already August and all of these would have been due by the mid-September anyway. For example, for Arts Activate, we have close to 200 contracts and 60 of them are fully done already. So in the vast stretch of contracts, we are actually doing very well. It's just a matter of making sure that these last ones that we get through the finish line correctly and in a way that allows us to be federally compliant. I am going to pause right here to talk about if anybody has any questions on this year. I'll get to next year next, I promise, but this year. Okay, let's talk about next year. Culture of value, we have received obviously the applications for 24, 25 that we are going to move into 25, 26. So we are potentially looking at having 2 rounds of culture of value next year and dates to be determined and communicated to artists, which is exciting. Arts Activate is going to change a little bit from the guidelines that you reviewed. We have received applications for round 1. We received those pretty, I believe that like the day after the city council resolution came through. And so there wasn't time to pull them and do something different. It may have been the week after. So we received round 1 applications with the guidelines as they stood before the city council resolution. And but because we knew this was coming, we did not send it to panel to be scored until we could have a rubric that we were sure was compliant. So we have sent a draft of updated compliant guidelines to the task force, and we are working with them to make sure that we have a rubric for the panel to score on that makes sense and guidelines that will fit for the rest of the year. And for this year, we are going to, due to the timing, because we are already a couple of months delayed on this, we are going to run Arts Activate with 2 rounds rather than 3. That doesn't necessarily mean that we will cut awardees that fewer than we normally would in a year. We may have 2 larger rounds, but we won't be able to do 3 separate rounds this time, and that's going to be a different logistical setup, which we will communicate to artists as soon as we have new dates. For COP, this is one we did receive full applications, and in a slightly more complicated way, the panel has already finished scoring, so we don't have an opportunity to change the rubric of what the panel will see. What's done is done, and we can't call those panelists back. However, we can review COP with sort of a modified scoring, and I'll show you what we're working on in the next couple of slides for that. Same thing with CAP. We've already received those full applications. The panel has already finished scoring. And as far as we're looking at it, we really don't want to add more further burden to applicants that did everything we asked of them the first time by asking for more information or asking for more panelists volunteer time. So for this year, for COP and CAP, we're going to do the very best we can with the information that we have. And if we do ask more, it will be a very light bit of information, and it will not involve continued panel hours. So I will show you what that modified scoring may look like, and we'll continue to work with our task force here at the city to make sure that it is fair to our artists, our process, and makes sense when we're done. Okay, that is all that I have specifically on where all our funding programs are for this year and the coming year. This is a good time to stop for questions on either of those things. And I am delighted that if you have complicated questions, as I'm sure you do, I'm going to form some friends with ACM Liz and Hannah and Martine and Glenn. I see the hands are kind of hard to see, but I do see Commissioner Halomo.
Commissioner Halomo.
Thank you. So for the Arts Activate Round 1, have those artists already been or artworks already been notified to let them know of the possibility of only 2? Because I know that there's certain criteria in terms of timing when they have to execute their work. So have they been asked if they're flexible to change their dates, et cetera, et cetera? Thank you.
That's a great question. We have only sent out the email that's at the back of your packet. That's the only information that we have sent out that just says that we will delay. Because until we can really confirm on our end what we're doing, what we don't want to do is send out 5 different versions of what we're doing to artists. So we will work with as many folks as we can for this round 1 with the applications that we have, and work on a case-by-case basis with folks on dates.
Follow-up question then?
Sure. Yes.
So I know that we're in the habit of granting the maximum amount, but would it be helpful to let everyone know that maybe possibly we won't be able to, or just to incorporate and absorb? Because I think that the arts community is very camaraderie in that, in that they want everybody to get a little bit versus the full thing.
Um, if sure. Can I ask one clarifying question, Commissioner? Are you asking about the budget part or the allocations?
The budget
Okay.
part for Arts Activate, if, we award up to whatever amount, then, maybe if we want to make sure that enough people who missed the round 1, because we're
Oh,
only
I
going
see
to
what you're
2.
saying. I thank you so much for that idea. Let me keep it mentally, and we will get there when we get to the allocations part, which will be in a little bit. I'm not quite ready to give you scenarios and work out specific dollars, but that is a great idea. Let me keep it.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spellacy?
Thank you. Do you anticipate any delay in the payouts to the COP groups? Because I know they normally get, a certain amount on certain dates, and we're now a little bit behind where we normally would. So I was, and plus the other
Sure.
question would be the follow up to that is if there is going to be a delay in payments, how is that going to possibly affect the groups? What they've put as kind of their items that they're using that money for, because if they get the money later, they may not be able to pay for some of the things earlier. So I'm just curious. And I know you've already said there's a couple groups that have had to adjust that based on their own individual budgets, but it may be a bigger problem if our payments start going out later.
I do have some happy news on that front. I don't actually anticipate us. I mean, what with this year, I promise I don't have any information that would let me think that we're going to pay people late. The reason I say that is because it takes us a long time to get through council, but first payments are made in December and January after people have already worked out their insurance, getting their contract signed, it's gone through council, they've turned in a monthly report. It's a long process, and so we have a lot of lead time for that December and January payment date. The longest part of that is actually the applicant organization getting their insurance right. And so if they know that they're getting funding and re-upping their insurance, I don't see things in our way of paying out that payment on time. That doesn't mean it's not impossible, but that I'm less concerned about than some of our other programs. Oh, final payments will also go out on time, because especially for those 55 organizations that their contracts are already fully signed. So those aren't delayed at all.
Okay. We don't see any hands up right now. So if you have your hand up for a question, can you do this?
Okay. Okay. So I have just talked about modified scoring for the CAP program and the COP program. So let's see what that might look like. So I don't remember it off the top of my head though. Okay. Oh, sorry. So especially for those who welcome, if you don't typically sit on the allocations committee. So brief review of the COP program, what it is, what it does, and what we're looking for, especially as we had a month off. So as a review, this cultural organizations program is our largest funding program. We annually contract cultural services with established nonprofit cultural and arts organizations. There are a lot of different eligibility requirements. Typically, we award funding as a percentage of revenue. And last year, what we did was institute what we are calling a minimum for each revenue range so that we can make sure that organizations of approximately the same size get approximately close to the same percentage of revenue. Last year, we also used the hotel occupancy tax to grow this program and changed our guidelines for 26 to begin a 3-year cycle, which will hopefully reduce a lot of administrative burden on our applicants. This is the typical COP selection process. We are typically by this point closing in on a funding scenario we like to go to full commission in September. We're not quite there yet. We are still looking at what that scores might look like. So your chair may ask for a few extra meetings in September, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we do have the benefit of a couple of city council meetings in October and November that we could go to several of them and still be okay to get folks their funding for the beginning of the year. As a reminder, we have a lot of people apply to this every year. Every organization from last year reapplied, and we had 14 new organizations. Normally, we have 5 or 6. So in terms of the number of groups that applied to this was a huge swell for this year. We had past Arts Activate awardees, past COP awardees, and then community arts partners, which is all really exciting and says wonderful things about what's happening in our Dallas arts community, as well as how creative people are being to look for new opportunities. We had panels. They took a week in May. We had all 68 applicant organizations that made it to panel attended, which was so great. And thank you to commissioners who joined us for that. We had about 50 panelists show up in person to ask questions about these. And this year, like Commissioner Holomo alluded to earlier, COP awardees, actually, some of them brought their own who then sat on other panels, which actually helps add a lot of credibility to the panel. And especially when you have someone who filled out the same application and knows what's in there, but isn't competing against you in a way. It let folks ask really good questions. I was really happy with how these went. So that at the end of the day, everybody got at least 6 to 9 scores from a panelist or from that set of panelists. Here was what they were scoring on and what else we look at in a year. So the rubric that was in our guidelines was we were going to have 35 for public benefit, 20 for access and impact, and 15 for organizational capacity that was scored by a panel. In the administrative side, you get 10 for contract compliance and financial viability, 10 for organizational program management, and 10 for adherence to cultural policy diversity criteria. That's that diversity of board and staff piece. This is what something might look like. Again, we're still working with the task force, but pulling out the pieces that no longer are allowed based on these federal directives. We need to look at the access and impact section differently because of the way that was worded. And so it can't stay there as a panel piece. And again, because the panel is already done, I can't just reword it. So instead, we do need to remove that section of points. But we do have an opportunity that we can look at quantitative pieces of information that still get at the same category. Again, like Chair Bragaluni said earlier, we are changing how we do things, but not necessarily what we're doing. So we still need to look at access and impact. We just might do it in a quantitative way rather than a qualitative one. So that might be, are you working questions like that have a yes or no answer that we can award points to? Like, do you have identified program for students in DISD, RISD, or other public school districts that are in the city of Dallas? Do you have identified programming for senior citizens? Do you have identified programming for folks with special needs? Do you have a method of tracking what your audience would like to see from you in your programming for coming years? Are you going out of your way to make sure that we are inviting to tourists? There are questions that we can answer that have a yes, no, quantitative thing that we can track on the admin side, even if we can't have it exactly as it was in panel. So that's the sort of finagling we're trying to do right this second to get a final score for everybody, rather than just stripping a section out. See if we can get at the essence of what we wanted to ask organizations about, but in a different way. The catch is I don't want to go back to these organizations asking for a whole lot more burden of information, as they already did a 50-page application earlier. So we're going to do our very best to make these very, very, very low lift or no lift on the applicants, which means that it'll be our team trying to figure that out. So we're going to do the best we can with our city task force, and encourage you, if you have ideas on how to make sure that we're doing that well, would love to have them as we go about doing this. So if something like that worked, we would have a total of 90 points. And so just like we do for our Arts Activate and COP, we always normalize those scores anyway. So the top score you would be able to get would be a 90, and rather than 100. So no foul, no sweat there. So when I say a modified scoring rubric, this is what I mean. Moving some of the categories, maybe taking some pieces out. We can't look at diversity of board and staff the same way, but again, we can get at some of the essence of what we wanted to measure, just in a creative way. Okay, who has questions about this?
Commissioner Truzella?
Thank you. One of the questions, are we still allowed to ask where your programming is happening?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Yes, we are allowed to use the cultural typology map. We're also allowed to use, I don't want to cold call ACM Liz, but if you are available, I think there's another tool that another group is working on in the city that has to do with location base, that also includes different demographic information. Oh, hi. There was another tool that you suggested we might look at, and I'm so sorry to put you on the spot, but I don't remember what that tool is called. Would you mind sharing?
Absolutely. Liz City Opereta, Assistant City Manager for the Vibrant Portfolio, and thank you for the question. Yes, demographic information, geographic information, socioeconomic information is permissible in many instances. So we will be using other tools, and another department is creating what's called the Community Opportunity Index, which will factor in a number of indices or indicators that give us good indications about needs in the community, et cetera, et cetera. And so we welcome that feedback. It's something that's under construction, under development. We'll be having several community engagement meetings, one, in fact, at the Latino Cultural Center next week, to get community feedback on that. So we'll try to keep you posted through the OAC team to receive this committee's insights as we develop it. Thank you so much.
And then my last question along those same lines were, we can't look at board diversity the way I understand it. Is that going to be in the administrative section? Where does that fall under?
That was adherence to cultural policy diversity criteria, and we did need to remove that.
So it was completely removed. Okay.
Yes, those 10 points, there's not a way that we have found yet to incorporate that in the same way that we were doing it before.
Understood. Thank you.
Chair Small.
Yes, hi. This question actually goes out to Liz. Liz, David Small here. And I just wondered, on the task force that is interpreting some of these guidelines and giving some direction, would it be possible for us to have some commissioners involved in that task force since, we're the ones implementing and going to set forth some recommendations? I'm just a little bit disappointed that we hadn't had some involvement earlier.
Thank you, Chair Small, for the question and for the insight. So let me try to clarify. When the city council made the directive to the city manager to take operational steps to ensure that the city was in compliance with federal directives, the city manager called for an internal grant compliance task force team. And so I'm actually the one who's leading it alongside our city attorney's office, alongside multiple departments, et cetera. And so it's strictly internal focused. We did an entire inventory of all of our policies, plans, and programs that may be impacted by federal directives. And departments really led the effort. As you can see, a lot of work has been put in by our team with the Office of Arts and Culture to identify those areas that maybe need to be modified. And so great work on their part. And then we looked at it from a grant compliance task force standpoint, and we're in the middle of that process. So to answer your long-winded way of answering your question, you are a critical component of that work, because now what we have asked our teams is to face externally to get information from our key stakeholders, in this case, our advisory commissions, to get input on the scoring rubric, to give it, question it, and then to take it back to the internal task force and say, okay, this is what we heard from our stakeholders. Additionally, we're going out there and having five community meetings at various venues throughout the city to get that input. So stakeholder engagement, in summation, stakeholder engagement is a critical component of this process. So after August 6th, when we briefed our city council, then we said, okay, teams across the city, meet with your stakeholders, meet with your external advisory commissions, et cetera, get their feedback, because in September 17th, I believe, we're going back to city council to brief them on what perhaps an omnibus ordinance looks like, with the necessary modifications that need to be made to comply moving forward. So I hope this answers your question. The short answer is you are a part of it, in the sense that we're seeking this input right now. And the other grant compliance task force was strictly City of Dallas employees. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz. If I might add to that, Chair Small, if for anyone who has an interest in kind of understanding the framework that the internal task force is working under, I highly recommend that you follow the link at the end of this. There's a list of materials at the end of Julia's briefing, and you can listen to that August 6th meeting. And I may be using the wrong terminology, Liz, but as I understand it, the task force came back to the city council ahead of the deadline that they had been given in order to give an initial briefing about what work was being done. So if you want to see where the task force is headed and what their thought process was, that internal task force of city leaders, that the summary of those findings can be heard in that August 6th meeting. Is that fair, Liz? Am I accurate on that?
That was spot on. Thank you so much. Yes,
Sure.
correct.
I listened to that meeting live, and I will say, from my perspective, it puts a lot of what we're talking about today in context. I know we've given you a lot of materials, and it is sometimes hard to get through all of this, but if you don't do anything else, listening to listening to that meeting, I think is helpful to put the whole process in context and to have some understanding of what our city staff citywide are facing with respect to compliance with the executive orders.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to follow up and say this, and I totally understand that, I mean, we are where we are, and we're dealing with the cards that we have in our hand. But by not allowing us to give input earlier, it kind of deprived us of the opportunity to give some pushback as to what compliance means. So, I'm not going to digress any further, but moving forward, if there's an opportunity to actually have some of the commissioners involved in the thought process in terms of what compliance looks like, as opposed to responding to what new guidelines we have to impose. I think that the citizens in the art community would be a little bit better represented. I'll just say that. So
Thank you, Chair Small. Did you have anything else? Okay, Commissioner Spellacy.
Thank you. I was going to ask staff, this may actually be a question for Liz, though, given that you've been on the task force. So obviously we're having to revamp to some degree some of the criteria and ultimately some of the things that were in our cultural plan, at least how we're implementing them in our programs. My question is actually in regards to a lot of the groups we support are historically underrepresented groups, and their mission is such. And a lot of the events that we support or are paid for by grants are specifically for those types of events. So what is the thought process about? We can obviously remove all these things from our actual rubrics and our guidelines and that sort of thing. But ultimately, we're still probably going to be supporting groups and events that are targeted specifically to diversity, equity, inclusion type things. So what is the concern around that, I guess, would be my question, or if we've even gotten that deep into it yet.
Thank you. I mean, I think your question is such an important question, and one that frankly we're still grappling with, and one that we want to get your feedback about. Because the line, might change over time, right? We may be thinking that we're hitting the mark, and then there's a new requirement. The executive orders continue to come out. We continue to get new federal department grant compliance directives and guidance, et cetera. So just to be completely frank, this is going to be a process that is iterative in nature as we seek to one, as Julia said, be legally resilient, and two, be responsive to our communities and advance the cultural plan as was adopted by the City Council, understanding that we may have to modify components of it. But what we have communicated to our internal teams is that we expect that we continue to forge forward with community impact and with community access, et cetera. And so that's why you still see them as part of this modified scoring rubric. Because our directive to all of our city teams was, this is not an opportunity to throw the baby out with the bathwater, for lack of a better phrase. It is an opportunity for us to go ahead and figure out how do we use various indicators that are going to continue to have us be reflective of our communities and responsive to community needs. That said, I know this answer is sort of half because we still need to figure out when we are making commitments to artist groups and if those artist groups, let's say this is hypothetically, would potentially run afoul of these directives because we are promoting we are wanting to say that we are promoting culture, we're promoting arts, and there's many forms and ways to do that. And so we think that we can continue to amplify that message and carry on that mission. But it's going to be challenging, and we're going to have to rely on leaders like yourselves to help us as we move through this uncharted territory.
Can I have a quick follow-up statement? This
Sure.
isn't really a question. My suggestion then is, I know we're still kind of dealing and working through what all this means. But I think it's going to be important that we provide training to our arts groups as they're writing grants in the future, because we know these executive orders are going to be in place for at least another 3 years. And I think it would be very helpful to explain to them, okay, these are the kinds of things that are not allowed by these executive orders. So these are the kind of things you should probably avoid in your grant applications. You know, make sure that you are targeting these other things in the events that you're putting on, for instance. Not necessarily that we're telling them to change what they're doing, just maybe change how they talk about it in their grant application. And that may help us a lot as far as not running into problems with grant applications that are kind of in opposition to what these executive orders are. And I think that would be something citywide, that would be something to look at for, I mean, we give grants to across all departments across the city. So it would be a great thing to have some just targeted talking points to tell our citizens and our nonprofits and our groups, and when they are applying for city money, here's the things you should do. Here's the things maybe that might be a problem for you with these orders, as we kind of get those figured out.
Thank you, Commissioner Spells.
Thank you. If I could just say real quickly, Chair, if it's okay, that thank you. We're writing that down, the training programs. It's exactly the type of information that we need moving forward. Thank you for the idea.
And Julia, if I'm getting this wrong, jump in. But we have each year as the application process starts, Julia holds workshops to assist with the applications. That's a process or a practice that existed even before we faced this challenge. So thank you for that suggestion, Julia. I'm guessing that could be incorporated into your workshops.
Yep. That's it. Thank you. I will take it. We will do it.
Commissioner Holomo.
Thank you. First off, I just want to alleviate Chair Small's concerns, because like so many Americans, Assistant City Manager Cedillo Pereira has been such an arts advocate. She has herself danced the Jarabe Tapatio growing up with some ballet folklorical lessons. So she is a true champion of the arts, and thank you for that. Really, really glad that we have you in our corner, Assistant City Manager. And to echo Brad's concerns, these federal directives, right? So our national OAC, right, is the NEA. It's that federal group that really should be sending us, the cities, et cetera, these directives that we should be taking into consideration when we're looking at our arts programs. Has anything like that come across your desk, OAC staff, from NEA?
Hey there. Not from the NEA, but the Americans for the Arts are tracking related orders and also offering a bit of guidance. Glenn and I are reviewing one of the most recent iterations of some information ahead of us sharing it forward following our upcoming full commission meeting. We have a few notes to share, and then we'll send it forward. We believe it's a document that is due for another update. I think it was most recently updated in middle of May. And so a few things have changed. There are just a few points that are due for update from Americans for the Arts, but we'll be sure to share that out. And it's quite organized. It helps constituents across the nation understand the impact of certain executive orders. The Americans for the Arts organization has some core principles that they suggest for arts organizations moving forward. And of course, naturally, you have nonprofits and traditional cultural arts organizations that would lean on this separate from municipalities. But of course, we maintain a relationship with AFTA via the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study that we participate in. So naturally, we'll be gleaning some information from the work they're doing in organizing and sharing information, and also offering guidance and practical steps that we can all take moving forward. So we'll be sharing that with the full body after our meeting on Thursday.
Thank you.
Commissioner Curiel, welcome.
Yes, along the same lines, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm in the car, so along the same lines of what Commissioner Spellacy and Holomo were saying, and Director Philippe and maybe you're going to tell us this on Thursday, but I know I've been thinking about the studies, the arts on prescription studies, the new Carnegie study. Will you also be telling us or giving us advice? I'm, thinking about that language, and I've been telling other folks to maybe pull from the health indicators or from kind of the, other sectors of community health and well-being. Is that something that we will be getting more information on, or that can be confirmed, that might help us or help the artists when they're writing their grants or coming up with ways to talk about what they're doing, but also even maybe to think about doing things like in partnership with clinics and things like that, or the health and community or industry.
Can I take a response at this, Julia?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Martine, thank you. Thanks for the question and thank you for the insights. That's one of the things that is a part of this new Drivers of Opportunity framework that's under development, and this Community Opportunity Index tool is to look at those areas where we know communities' quality of life improves as a result of XYZ. And one of them are asset-rich neighborhoods, right? Or community well-being, environment, et cetera. And so we're thinking through this Drivers of Opportunity framework. We're going to be presenting it at the LCC next week at this first community meeting. And would love to have your input there. How do we make that resonate or responsive to what artists need, in terms of a framework that could be a guide for them moving forward as we build out new scoring rubrics for all of our funding opportunities.
Okay, so the question that sorry.
Commissioner Truzella.
Sorry, this may be a bit premature, but I don't even know if this is standard, but with our cultural plan, will we need to go in and revise that?
I'm going to let Director Philippe address that question.
So your 2018 cultural plan and policy passed in 2018 with a 7 to 10 year implementation phase, which puts us in year 7. And as we noted last year at our State of the Arts event, we've made considerable progress and some notable achievements related to the strategies aligned with each of the 6 priorities. And given the circumstances related to COVID, which was unexpected in 2018, and now where we've landed following COVID, we were already due a revisit, if you will, in engaging with our community to draft a 2.0 version of the plan. And so, quite frankly, separate from what's noted here in our executive orders, we were shifting our focus at the commission's committee level to begin the steps forward to figure out what our future 5-year plan would look like. And so we intend to embark on that journey in the coming fiscal year.
To close this part out, the question that I didn't hear you ask, but I know is on your mind is, okay, so when? We are charging through August, and we need to start looking at scenarios and making votes. We will get with the task force on this last red piece. For your peace of mind, everything else is graded. And ready to go. It's just these last couple of points. So we should be able to get scenarios to you at that meeting on September 4th. So that is our deadline to get that back to you so that we can get to voting and not be delayed further on this part of our process. Okay, keep going. Okay, last as we're talking about COP, as I know has been on, this was on our minds before June and hasn't gone away. So I did want to bring this up, that this is a really challenging economic time for a lot of organizations. This year, multiple organizations have notified us that the scope of work that they submitted back way in February when this application opened is no longer feasible for the fall due to financial factors. Two of the largest organizations that you may have already heard about is Dallas Children's Theater and Big Thought. Each did significant workforce reductions, as well as changing a little bit of their scope for next year. Dallas Children's Theater being larger, but Big Thought certainly being among that. Other organizations cut their scope of work from previous years in their original application, as in they already knew back in February that their year was going to look a little bit different than it had in past years. And so they went ahead and showed reduction in that in their original application. So this is part of the arts life cycle, that some years are leaner than others, and this is a special new time with a whole lot of other factors. So OAC does not recommend, and we did play with, okay, if you are changing your scope by X amount, then we might consider changing your funding by Y amount. And that is just not a tenable precedent to set for the way that we fund this program. So understanding that scope changes may happen to every organization and they may not tell us about it. We'd much rather have open lines of communication and organizations telling us what they're actually doing, that the city is actually funding, and being honest about these scopes and as close to accurate as we can, so that we accurately represent where people's tax dollars are going and where they have the opportunity to see and experience art in the city of Dallas. So understanding that scope changes may happen, and they may happen to anyone. We don't recommend cutting funding arbitrary amounts based on some mathematical connection to how much scopes are reduced. However, what we do recommend is that we will try really hard this year in the way that you see scenarios to make sure that these organizations and others, especially as we know scopes are changing a little bit, that their percentage of funding is aligned with peers in their tier. So what that means is there have been some organizations that historically, for the length that they have been in the program or other factors, that the amount of funding that they were getting may not be in comparable range to those with same scores, services, and peer groups. And we will be making some changes for those scenarios that you see next month, rather than making sort of arbitrary cuts here and there based on scope changes. I see lots of questions. Here we go.
I'm going to start at the top with Commissioner Holomo.
Thank you. Okay, so at what point are we patient and understanding with these groups where maybe in 6 months they say, well, we're going to have to cut back even further, or, 3/4 into the contract, we're going to have to cut even more. At what point do we say, okay, well, we gave you X amount of dollars based on a full year? Have you thought about that?
Yes. So once you do sign a contract with the city, we do hold you to the contract and ask you to complete those things and stay in touch with us. Now, we understand that some things happen, but if you're not turning in reports that match the contract that we signed with you, we do not, we can revisit that contract at points during the year to acknowledge that.
And the funding is in 3 tranches.
Yes, the funding takes place in 3 payments anyway. So we do we do take those contracts very seriously. I'm talking about now before the contract is even signed. What we don't want is to set a precedent where people are inflating their numbers for the services they provide, and then we're not able to accurately share those services with our citizens here in Dallas and residents.
So a follow-up question would be then, because, we only meet monthly and these reports come in similar situations, we've been very patient for some of the groups who have not fulfilled the COP obligations. Are we going to be presented with it at a meeting and then asked to vote on it? Or, how flexible are we going to be about this? Because this will be precedents that we're setting.
So Commissioner Halama, as a general rule, contract compliance is not something that the committee addresses. That's handled by staff. And I assume, and the director or any of the staff can correct me if I'm wrong about this, if it is something that can't be handled by staff or they have a complicated question about it, then they might bring one of those questions to us for input or an opinion. But we don't historically look at each contract and look at compliance. That's a staff function. So we enter into a contract. The committee makes a recommendation to the city council about who should be funded what amount. The city council accepts or rejects or modifies that recommendation. Once that process has happened, then it becomes a staff function to execute the legal contracts with whatever help is needed from the city attorney's department to execute a legal document that memorializes what our committee has recommended to the commission, who's recommended to the city council, and then passed by the city council. So that then we are done at that point. Then it becomes a staff function to execute the contracts, and then before each payment is made, to monitor compliance with the contracts, which they do with a pretty extensive reporting process, which is in our guidelines. So
I'm very familiar with that. I completely understand that. But what I'm referring to is we've had issues with the Women's Chorus of Dallas and the Children's Chorus and Orchestra of New Spain that have made our agenda, and we've talked about it for months. I just want to make sure that we're fully...
Sure, those are on the front end on qualifying before we make the recommendations, before we get to the contract. So it's just a timing issue. Excellent question, but we don't typically, the compliant, once we have monitored those issues to determine whether or not we would recommend to the commission that the commission recommend to the council that we fund those people. And you are right, we've had some really sticky issues in the last 2 or 3 years where there have been some guidelines that we had to address, whether we were going to just recommend that they not be funded at all. But all of those, I think I'm right about this, all of those issues have been pre-contract at the recommendation stage. And so as I understood your question, you were talking about compliance afterwards, and that will be completely a staff function. But what we will be involved in, which is what Julia was speaking to a few minutes ago, on the recommendation side, and we'll start addressing this next month, we have 2 or 3 organizations who've come to us up front before we've made the recommendation. So between the application and before we made the recommendation to say, hey, something has changed. And so the way that will work is staff will make some recommendations to us about how we address that, how that impacts what recommendation we make. I hope that's clear. So yes, we will be involved in looking at that on the front end. For example, Organization A goes through the application process and the panel, and they say, this is the scope of my work. Typically, then that comes to us in one piece, just like that for the recommendations. But we've had some organizations who've now called before the recommendations are made to say, oh, my scope's only going to be this. And as I understand what Julia is saying is, they will be giving us at least 2 different scenarios, as they always do. And one of the things we will be looking at is just how much, being advised of that in advance, what we should do about it. And it is a bit of a conundrum because it's excellent for us to, because as you've stated, you understand, and as we've kind of outlined here, our role is before the initial recommendation is made. So we want to be mindful and encourage those organizations to come to us before the recommendation is made, where it doesn't have to be addressed at the staff level as a compliance issue, but where we can look at it at a time when we're making the recommendations, because if we feel like that means what they've historically received should be reduced, then that provides means those funds could be available to recommend to another organization. So that's where we'll get to look at it next month in terms of, with respect to the organizations that have actually advised us their programs are shrinking. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you for the question. It's an excellent question. Okay. There were a lot of hands up and now the order has all switched, but I believe Commissioner Hornbuckle is next.
Yes, with all of this going on, where does Dallas Black Dance stand in this process?
They are a 25, 26 applicant with a scope that they turned in that has not changed.
So it's similar to the years before, is that correct?
Yes. So we do have multiple organizations, I think, that it have been, for example, when Deep Ellum had a year that they didn't turn in their application and then they came back the next year, you're allowed to reapply as a quote unquote new organization if for whatever reason you take a year off. Or in the women's course case too, I think they're back as well after a 2-year hiatus.
Short version, their application will be considered just like every other application this year.
Okay, and was their revenue down from previous years?
Don't have that handy. And that's actually not what I'm talking about on this slide. So I do want to clarify, when I say scope change, I don't mean their revenue change, because that happens to everybody. What I'm talking about is the service list that folks put forward saying, I'm going to have 8 plays and 4 ballet recitals and 3 summer camps. I now can't do that. And it's going to be 2 ballets, 1 summer camp, and an art workshop instead. So that's what I mean by scope of work change. I don't mean your revenue change, because that would be a whole different conversation.
I guess I didn't ask it right. Are they in the same category that they were in prior years?
I don't have that in front of me, unfortunately.
So we're going to, Commissioner Hornbuckle, we'll have those scenarios next time. Like, that's what Julia will be working on once we get past the changes that have to be made in the rubric. Then we will have that not only for Dallas Black Dance Theater, but for every organization, where they fall in what tier.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Trezilla.
Thank you. So I recognize that we're not talking about revenue, but it would seem to me that if your scope changes significantly, your revenue is going to change significantly, because your scope in most instances bring in money.
My only pause that I might put on that is, you are absolutely correct that those two things make total sense. But the revenue that we're looking at in the application is only what is on a 990 that has been filed.
Okay.
And so very often there is a time lag in between a significant revenue loss that you would need to accommodate with a scope change and the revenue that you're going to report in a year. So I don't think we're going to see really dramatic revenue drops from a whole lot of organizations because of that time lag, basically. The other piece that is a cushion that we provide for organizations now that allows for less dramatic revenue drop is we allow them to take either their last 990 or the average of the last 3 years, which also helps people out a little bit. We take whichever one is higher, we'll work with you. But that allows to be less of a dramatic spike or drop for a lot of organizations. So I would put a little asterisk towards your great comment. Yes, and.
That makes sense. And refresh my memory, because we're going to a 2-year funding cycle, how will this affect next year when they don't go through the full application?
Sure. So next year, it's a 3-year cycle. So this is year 1. And the difference between year 1 and years 2 and 3 was year 1 had the panel part. But years 2, you still have to submit a new scope of work saying what you're going to do. Each year has a fresh contract. And we are not held, even though it is a 3-year cycle, it is not a 3-year contract. So the amount that we award can be different. The scope can be different from year to year. And it allows us to move with the city's budget, which we don't know until the coming year. And it allows us to be able to be flexible with organizations. They also still get a score in years 2 and 3 that is unique. It's just all admin. So rather than having 100 points, 70 of them being panel and 30 being admin, it might be 50 points and they're all admin. So you still get a score that allows us to put our, yes, we can tell that you're doing the wonderful work that we want to continue contracting. But the burden of getting in the program is not there. It'll be the same list of organizations that we're funding, ideally, unless an organization does not fulfill their first contract with us. That's a separate story. But if you fulfill the contract for the first year, the idea is you are automatically accepted into the second one if with a high enough score. And we told folks that the amounts might be comparable between the years, but we never promised that they'll be exactly the same. I'm not sure if I actually answered your question. Was there a piece of that I missed?
You did. You did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, help me. I don't see any more. Commissioner Trezilla, your hand is still up. Did you have a follow-up question? Still up. Okay.
Someday, folks, I promise you'll be done hearing my voice. I'm even tired of it, so thank y'all for hanging with me. Okay, staff updates.
I actually have a question. My hand's been up, but I don't know if you can see me on
Oh,
the
I'm
screen.
sorry.
It's
over a poster, Commissioner.
Yeah,
So
you
we
know.
just see your music poster.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry about that. So it's just actually a quick question for you, Julia. So when you said that you're going to recommend that we kind of normalize the scores within a tier so that the groups are kind of aligned. I mean, we've been working on that for like the 5 years I've been on this group, trying to get each tier a little bit more aligned as far as percent revenue. My question to you is, when you make your recommendations to us, are you going to be doing that across the board, or are you looking specifically at just those groups that had a reduced scope? And if they, for instance, were a higher percent of revenue than their peers in the group, you're going to recommend that we walk that back a little bit to make it more normalized? So I guess my question is, are you looking at normalizing everybody in your recommendations, or particularly the ones that had a drop in scope?
So I will present 2 scenarios next time. One of them will start as a baseline of what you got last year, up or down by score, and invite in some new friends. The other one is going to be a little closer, inching just a little more towards your money is more related to your tier and your score, and less so on historical funding levels. Like every year that I've been here, as to your point, every year we just get a little bit closer and we tweak it and we mess with it. What I meant in that last slide was not that I was going to suddenly start making 1 million cuts to people. I don't think this is the year to do that. What I do mean is I'm going to continue to encourage us to make this program sustainable and something that we can explain how people got the funding amounts that they got and make it sustainable over time, which may mean raising minimums like we've talked about and making sure people are explainably in their tier group. What I meant by that slide is I'm not going to create some sort of mathematical equation that says you're cutting 40% of your services, we're cutting 40% of your funding. I'm not going to do that. So I just wanted to set us up for that expectation that you're not going to see some like behind the scenes math of penalizing people for cutting their scope this round. What you will see is us getting tiers that make sense with the ranges that we have. Does that make sense? Okay. I think Commissioner.
Yes, Commissioner Halomo.
Thank you. Just to follow up to Commissioner Spelisi's point. So, and I'm sure the answer is yes, because you're fantastic. You'll let us know, right, in the scenarios if other groups have come forth and said, hey, we've had a change of situation here. Our scope of work is going to be a fraction of what it was before. You'll let us know if any new groups or what groups we need to take into account, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Halomo. Okay, so at this point, we're going to move on to staff updates. We are at 5:54. Julia, I want to thank you for giving us a preview of what you're thinking about on the scenarios. I want to remind anybody, if other questions are popping up in your head in the last few minutes of our meeting, this meeting is really not about, was not intended to be about any particular organization or scenarios or what might happen, but really to brief us all on how we remain in compliance with all of the applicable orders and rules, and to give you kind of a context for what you will need to know for why changes might be being made as we move forward with the scenarios. So we'll have scenarios at our first meeting in September. Do you want to do staff update?
Yep, sounds good. That community meeting that we have been talking about is going to be here next Tuesday. It is August 26th. Would love to see you there. Thank you in advance for helping support our arts community. We'll see you September 4th. Your chairs may also want to schedule another meeting in September. This group, I know, really is passionate about the Dallas arts ecosystem, and that passion often turns into meetings that have a lot of conversation when we get to COP scenarios. So we may need some additional meetings to channel that passion. September 11th is looking pretty definite if we have a quorum. So I'll let your chair talk about that.
I think it is, well, you know what? I would be really happy, but somewhat surprised if we are able to do all this work in one meeting. Although if we are able to do all this work in one meeting, it's because of all of the work that has been going on in the office while we were on vacation, right? We weren't having the meetings, but that doesn't mean that Julia and Glenn and the entire staff were not already starting to run scenarios and look at what might happen once we have the go. So Julia is not going back to her desk to start from scratch tonight after this meeting. She's been working on it for the last 2 months. So I suspect those scenarios that were given in September will be quite good. But it's likely that we'll have a lot of discussion, and we may have some suggestions. One of the things that is excellent about this committee is all of the input. And so there may be something that staff has not thought of, and that when we see the scenarios, we ask Julia to go back and tweak it. So to that end, somebody on the staff will be sending an email this week to check with you on availability. But our initial thought was to just stick with Thursdays. We have a commission meeting on the 18th. Our regular meeting is on the 4th. So you can expect an email asking about your availability on September 11th, and probably also again on September 25th. We can make those decisions as we move forward with this and see how quickly we're able to get the work done. But thank you all for your attention today and for the important questions and suggestions. We are now at 5:57. There being no further business before this committee. Oh, pardon me. I'd like to call on my co-chair, Commissioner Hornbuckle.
I'll make this real brief. I know the time. I have a couple of minutes, but I wanted to, early this morning, Julie and Lynn of Public Art came to the Dallas College and spoke to about 200 or 300 instructors, and they were spreading the gospel about the wonderful work that happens at the Office of Arts and Culture. And I want everyone to know how much I appreciate them doing that, and then her rushing back to conduct this meeting. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hornbuckle. Thank you, Julia. Okay, there being no further business before the committee today, I call the meeting to a close at 5:58 p.m. We'll see you all the first week in Well, we'll see you all next week at the commission meeting. Thursday, 2 days from now at the commission meeting. See you
Thank you.
then.